My mother-in-law came to stay with us for 12 days, after our baby was born. She said she wanted to help. Honestly, I believed her. But on day 9 of that visit, while I was in the shower, she walked into my baby's room. And what she did in that room, in those 15 minutes, would unravel a secret her own family had been hiding for 30 years. This is what happened. My name is Savannah. And at the time all of this happened, I was 28 years old, living in Charleston, South Carolina, with my husband Tyler, and our 3-month-old daughter, Lily. Tyler and I had been together for 4 years before Lily was born. He's the kind of man who remembers small things: your coffee order, the name of your 3rd grade teacher. Solid. Steady. A good man, through and through. His mother, though, she was something else entirely. Diane lived in a large house outside of Charleston, South Carolina. Old money, quiet power, and an effortless way of making you feel like you didn't quite belong in whatever room she was standing in. She never said anything outright cruel. She didn't have to. It was always the small things, redirecting a conversation away from me, mentioning Tyler's ex-girlfriend in passing, complimenting my cooking in a way that made it sound like a surprise. For 4 years, I told myself it was just her personality. That was the first mistake. When I got pregnant with Lily, I genuinely hoped things would shift between us, and for a moment, they seemed to. Diane called more often. She sent a hand-addressed card. But then the baby came, and so did she, and her visits started to feel less like support and more like inspections. She would reorganize our kitchen without asking. Move the bottles, rearrange the pantry. She'd ask questions about my prenatal care, about who I'd been spending time with during the pregnancy, and every question started the same way: Tyler mentioned, even when I knew Tyler hadn't mentioned anything at all. At the time, I just thought she was controlling. Looking back, that was the first warning sign. Lily was about 3 months old when it happened. Diane was staying with us, day 9 of 12, and I'd stepped into the shower for maybe 15 minutes. When I came back out, she was standing near the crib. Just standing there. She smiled when she saw me. Said she'd been checking on the baby. Something felt off. But I couldn't name it. So I let it go. A few days later, I was going through a baby bag Diane had gifted us, one of those overstuffed totes with little pockets inside. And in one of the inside pockets, I found a sealed plastic bag. Inside it was a cotton swab. I called a friend of mine who works in healthcare. I described what I'd found. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then she said, quietly, "That's a DNA swab, Savannah." She had tested my daughter. Without my knowledge. Without my consent. To see if Tyler was the father. I didn't say a word to Diane. Not yet. Because the moment I understood what she'd done, something clicked into place. Her suspicion didn't come from nowhere. It came from somewhere inside her own history. And I started to pay attention to things I had dismissed for years. Tyler and his brother Blake looked almost nothing alike. Tyler had darker features, his grandmother's high cheekbones, his grandfather's build. Blake looked exactly like their late father, Richard, same jaw, same eyes, same smile. I'd always just assumed it was one of those things families explain away with stories about great uncles and distant cousins. But then I asked my cousin Deshawn, who has a very particular set of skills and very few ethical hesitations about using them, to look into something for me. A few weeks later, he had an answer. Tyler and Blake shared no paternal DNA. They had different fathers. Diane had been carrying that secret for 30 years. And somewhere in the deep, tangled logic of guilt, she had projected all of it onto me. I told Tyler about the swab. I kept the rest to myself for now. And Tyler, I'd never heard him like that. He called his mother from our living room, and I sat in the kitchen listening to him say things I didn't know he had in him. He was quiet but absolute. He told her what she had done was a violation. Of me. Of Lily. Of him. A few days later, she came over. She sat across from me at the dining room table, and she gave an apology that sounded rehearsed, careful, controlled, every word placed exactly where it needed to be. She looked at me and said, "I hope you can understand where I was coming from." I looked right back at her and said, "I forgive you." Not because I felt it fully in that moment, but because forgiveness wasn't a gift to her. It was a door I was closing. And I wanted her to know I was the one closing it. Since that afternoon, something changed in her. The loaded questions stopped. The audits stopped. She still comes around holidays, birthdays, but there's a careful distance in her now that wasn't there before. Like she knows that I know something, even though neither of us has ever spoken it aloud. I never used what I found as a weapon. I thought about it. But I made a choice to carry it quietly, the way she had carried her own secret for 3 decades. Not out of cruelty. Out of protection for my husband, for my daughter, for the version of this family I was still trying to build. Because here's what I've learned, the people who question your legitimacy are almost always the ones most afraid of their own. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do, is simply let them wonder what you know. To this day, I still don't think she knows how much I know. And I've decided, that's exactly how it should stay.